Now I'd like to recognize Mr. Lamborn for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Hall-Rivera, I have a couple questions for you. Can you explain the difference between timber contracting and stewardship contracting?
Yes, thank you for that question, sir. So timber contracting is essentially just a basic transaction between a vendor and the Forest Service. It's generally looking at commercially viable timber, and of course, the folks that bid on those timber contracts are looking to make a profit. That's part of their business, harvesting timber. Stewardship contracting is a tool in the toolbox. It has a few different purposes, and it is based on this model of what we call goods for services. So folks who bid on the contracts get goods, timber, right, that is worth something for them and for the products that they can create, but they also, as part of that same contract, provide services. And generally, those are around restoration type services, hazardous fuels treatment. They may be related to, say, water quality or wildlife projects as well. So it's a broader tool, and it helps us. Both of them are important. Stewardship contracting, we have really increased the use of that over the last few years, and has really enabled us to develop deeper collaborations and partnerships as well.
Okay, very good. Now, why do timber companies opt to leave hand piles in the forest, and do these piles create fire risk?
Well, under a timber contract, a company is going to do what we write in the contract, sir. And so at times we ask them to remove those piles as part of the contract, and so they do that, and of course they bid that into their price. At times, depending on the land and resource management plan or the goals that the silviculturist may have for that sale, we may ask the contractors to leave the piles. And they generally pay into a brush disposal fund that then we use to dispose of the piles, maybe when it's more seasonally appropriate, let's say. We do that mainly to reduce fire risk, but burning piles, as you're probably aware, can pose its own risk. Not to mention the fact that, like we just talked about with Mr. Westerman, we can probably make better use of that material if we can convert it into more of a productive forest product.
Okay, and in a typical forest, how is the salvage material spread throughout the healthy portions of the forest? And what relationship does that have with the technique of clear cutting?
So if we have a disturbance event, it kind of depends on what that is. Say if it's a wind throw or a hurricane, you'll see salvage material, laying down in piles as a result of the wind. A fire, of course, you'll see it more dispersed throughout the forest, depending on the severity of the fire. So in a natural disturbance, you'll see what we would refer to as salvage material arranged differently depending on the slope, the aspect, and the type of disturbance. In terms of a timber sale, which maybe is what you're asking about, sir, again, you may see salvage left on the ground in a pile, limbs, tops, things like that, depending, again, on how the contract was written. I'm not completely sure I understand your question regarding the relationship to clear cutting, though.
Well, yeah, what I'm trying to get at is how can you thin a forest without clear cutting?
Oh, okay. Yes, so thank you for clarifying that for me. So I think you would find that a majority of the treatments that take place in the forest around thinning, especially if it has to do with hazardous fuels reduction, really are not clear cuts at all. And what we are doing, especially in western forests, is taking overly stocked dense forests and reducing them back to where you would see a more natural range of variability. So the operator is generally going to be taking out smaller diameter trees, again, those trees that we need to find markets for, and they're leaving a lot of other large trees behind that can then flourish because they are not competing with those small trees. So it's generally not what you would see in a clear cut where you would remove all the standing biomass.
Are there factors holding back contractors from being involved in more contracts?
Well, I would say that a big challenge that we have both in the Forest Service and in our contracting community is capacity. Just getting people interested in this work, getting them out to do this work in the woods. We have a lot of people leaving that workforce and retiring from that workforce, as you're probably pretty aware in your state. I would say some of the other challenges, again, is a lot of the material that is coming off our forest to reduce fire risk is not particularly marketable and doesn't really have a use for industry now. And so that's why we need those critical partnerships together with industry and researchers to help us develop these innovative markets for this small diameter material.
Okay, thank you, and I'm hopeful my legislation is one piece of the puzzle to help accomplish that. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.